You've heard from Tony Hoffman, the BMX champion. Really cool guy, but he dealt with drug addiction. And you heard how it kind of took him down and how hard it was for him to fight back. But drug addiction, isn't just a Tony Hoffman problem or a problem for someone famous in California. It's hitting home right here, and it's probably impacting you and the people that you know. It's everywhere. I know you hear parents, you hear teachers, you hear people talk about how drugs are bad and you shouldn't do them. Well, we're going to talk to some local people today about how they've been impacted by drugs and what they're doing to help our community here locally in Wicomico County fight back against the problem. And we're continuing the conversation about drug addiction and the impact it has on us here locally. I'm Jenny Pastisak, and joining me now is Matt Massarello. He is the state's attorney for Wicomico County. Thank you for joining me, Matt.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I really want to focus in on what Wicomico County, what our local area is doing to combat this problem of the drug addiction that has pretty much spiraled out of control, taking over a lot of our people.
Quite a bit. In fact, Wicomico County is one of the leaders in the state in managing the opioid and heroin crisis. One of the first things that we did as a county was we had one point person. So that's in the state's attorney's office. We have a person who is a heroin opioid reduction strategist. That's Richard Bruckner. He is the point person to get all the data, to come up with all the ideas, and kind of lead this coalition to working through this epidemic. So what is he responsible for? Well, he's responsible for enforcement and prosecution. He's responsible for monitoring how many people are going into drug court. That's our intervention piece. He's responsible for coming up with creative ideas for prevention. So he came up with the art and film competition, which we just concluded, that spreads the message of prevention awareness. A lot of parents didn't know that this heroin epidemic actually starts in the home with middle schoolers and high schoolers stealing prescription drugs from their parents. So we did an art and film competition to get other teens to teach other teens about the problem. We have a COAT team. The COAT team is a community team that actually after hours, so the health department's open 8 to 5. Mm-hmm. This is a team that when overdoses occur after hours or on weekends or holidays, this team goes out and is the bridge to treatment. So they actually meet with the addicted individual that is overdosed. A lot of times when people overdose too, they have friends around them that are actually using as well. And one of them may want out. This team will actually serve as the bridge and will get them into treatment. Another thing that we've done here is we've sped up access to treatment. Addicts used to have to wait about a week and a half for a physical to get into our methadone program, which we are the only place on the shore that has a methadone program. And now they get the folks that are addicted get a physical to get in methadone the next day. So there's just a ton going on. We're not really Johnny-come-latelys to managing this crisis. Actually, it's been about a 3-year buildup to managing this, because we saw the change right around 2011 shift on the street from cocaine to heroin in law enforcement. Wow. So we have been working together with the health department since that time, really sort of building up our strategy, and that's why others around the state are looking to Wicomico County on how we're managing, because although we have, it's bad, our numbers could be much worse because other counties are much, much worse off than we are right now.
And I know we only have a couple minutes, but I do want to talk to you about the law enforcement side. A lot of people say, just put them in jail. Just put them in jail. Mm-hmm. They'll get clean. Is law enforcement, it's a necessary piece of the pie?
I believe it absolutely is. I think that we should give them intervention once they're in, but a lot of folks are not going to go get that help unless they have court intervention. That is a proven data-driven statistic. Mm-hmm. So we should not be able to not throw up our hands and say enforcement isn't working, because it is working. A lot of people get into treatment like drug court. They get through. We had a person just graduate. She went through 2 years of basically probation on steroids through drug court, and now she's reunited with her children. She's got a job. She's going to be very successful because she had to. I don't think she would have made that choice on her own.
So it's called Drug Court, but it's really a program to help them get better.
Absolutely. It's wraparound services for the addicted. With the sort of the stick is the sanction, the carrot is all these services. We teach them how to manage their life, how to keep a planner, how to get a job, how to keep a job, all these life skills, including intensive outpatient treatment through the health department and continuity of those services through the health department to get them to a place where they are fully functional and working in the community again.
That's great. And I know, the alternative is overdose deaths. And I know that you had said when we were talking previously that you've gone to the scene, you've talked to the families. That's not an alternative people want to have to face.
No, it's tragic. As a parent myself, I'm a parent to 2 kids, and as a parent, you pay for lessons, you go to all the sports games, you help them with homework. And to see something so insidious as a pill that can be taken out of your medicine cabinet, taken and ruin their lives, that's something that is very concerning to me as a parent. And I have so many parents calling me crying about their sons and daughters being addicted, and the tragic calls I'm getting them almost weekly now about the overdose and then tragically the overdose deaths, and dealing with the families. I deal with the families all the time.
How many overdose deaths locally?
We are double last year at this point. So we had 9 reported overdose deaths. We'll probably see an increase in that because, again, sometimes there's investigations that go on once people die, and then through toxicology we learn that later that they've overdosed. But we have 9 confirmed overdose deaths. We have about 155 reported overdoses. So again, double the amount of overdoses this year. So about 155. And these overdoses, they're pretty extreme medical situations. I mean, we have people that are intubated. We have people that are in the hospital for 20 and 30 days sometimes and will never be the same. Mentally, they're deprived of oxygen. So again, for the high school students that are out there, this is something that devastates your body. If you like to run, you like to play, you like to sing, you like to do all these activities. I mean, we have people that are basically completely changed because of the deprivation of oxygen to their brain. And so even though they don't die, their quality of life is severely diminished, and it's just tragic.
It is. And I think, the message, we're talking, this video is for students out there, but it really doesn't discriminate. Like, this can be anyone. It can be the grandma, the woman you sit next to in church, your baseball coach. This drug addiction with opioids could be anyone.
Certainly. We even see a lot of student athletes. I've got two student athletes in my family. We see people that have sports injuries that are then prescribed Oxycontin or hydrocodone, and they get addicted to those drugs. So again, it's necessary as a parent, necessary as a student athlete and a student to just be aware that these prescription pills have effects. It can grab you after a while, and then you're stuck. Right. So they should be taken only as prescribed by a doctor, monitored by a doctor, but common sense should dictate, because again, getting over an addiction is a big endeavor.
Sure. I guess to wrap up, the one message you have for these students and even just the whole big picture of how Wicomico is handling this issue.
I would say this: don't break your parents' heart. To the kids, don't break your parents' heart. They put so much, your caregiver and your parent put so much time into you. The teachers are putting so much time into you. Don't break their heart by messing with prescription pills, because it leads to addiction, and it ultimately leads now to death. So never start with the pills.
There you go. Just don't start.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
We'll be right back. And joining us now is Laura Mitchell with the Salisbury City Council, but not only with the City Council. Laura has been touched personally by drug addiction. Thank you for joining us, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
And let's talk first about before we started this interview, we talked about how you had your opinions on, how the municipalities handled things and law enforcement, and then it touched you personally, and your ideas changed a little bit.
They did. I was on council before I realized how personally I had been touched, and I was seeing the drain on the resources. I was seeing us have to put more money into the police department for petty crimes and investigations and court time and things like that. And that doesn't count the prosecution part of it at the county level and the incarceration at the county and at the state level and even the federal level. I mean, it's astronomical. Mm-hmm. It's about $45 a day to incarcerate someone, each person. So when 80% of our prison population is there for drug-related reasons in one way or another, you can see the math really quickly.
Yes.
It's a big deal. Conversely, it's about $4.52 a day to treat. So, in my opinion now, we're doing it all wrong. Mm-hmm. There was a day where I probably was one of those that said, lock them all up. Mm-hmm. Just put them in jail and throw away the key and we won't have a problem anymore. But the problem is humongous. It is an epidemic. You hear that word thrown around a lot, but it really is. Mm-hmm. The most recent national poll was that 50% of people in the United States know someone directly who is addicted. Not know someone who knows someone. Know someone directly. And that's the first time that that's happened. It's kind of our generation's cancer. Mm-hmm. It's very hard not to know someone who has had cancer or has cancer or have lost someone to cancer. And addiction is going that same way.
Can you share a little bit about your own personal, it wasn't you just knowing someone, it was your family?
Oh yeah, it came right in the front door. Mm-hmm. My son had some issues, mental health issues as a child. And then when he was injured as a teen, he was given an opiate prescription, something I would never do again, but I didn't know. The doctor said, here, this will help with the pain. He crushed some facet nerves in his back and was in a great deal of pain. And it was palliative while we found a fix. Well, we weren't able to find a fix because of the way that he was injured. And the pills kept coming, and they kept coming. And the nature of opiates is that you start with a little bit, and then you need a little bit more and a little bit more to get the same relief, because it makes your brain grow extra receptors that convince you that you're in more pain and not less pain. Even after, say, a surgery, where it should be getting better day by day, your brain is saying to your body, it hurts more, I need more and more and more. And he got hooked on the pills. And then when the pills became unavailable, there was this corner dealer or friend or someone who thought they were helping with the white horse, as they call it, heroin, that gave him that relief that he needed and kept him from going through the horrific withdrawals that you get when you stop abruptly. And then we were off to the races.
It just happened that quickly.
That quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting from pills and moving to heroin, you're already addicted before you start, because they're both opiates. Mm-hmm. If you have never taken any opiates or aren't already using on a regular basis and you try heroin, even 80 to 90% of people who try heroin the first time are hooked. That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's that powerful. And it's not, apparently it's a very euphoric feeling, like you've never felt before in your life. And that is what makes people feel so good and feel like they want to have that sensation again. Mm-hmm. So that's the psychological pull, but it also immediately gets that physical pull. And so then you're hooked in two ways. So the first couple of times they might be looking for that high or trying to recreate that high. But after that, it's really just about not withdrawing, because the withdrawals are so horrific and they're just trying not to be sick.
Well, for parents out there too, because you saw it, what are signs that they need to look for in the home to know, whoa, I think we have a problem here?
Yeah, I remember the day that I figured it out. Like, I remember the day the Challenger exploded. It's seared in my brain. I was watching, actually my son was with us at the time, was living with us, and he was watching a show on TV, and they were talking about the new Narcan treatment that had come out. And they were showing some of how they would know that someone was overdosing or was using, and one of the things was the nodding off. They could be sitting and eating and have their fork halfway to their face and just nod right out and then wake back up, and that in and out. And I didn't realize. It's like, oh, I'm tired. I didn't sleep well last night. And I heard that so many times. But that nodding out. The spoons missing out of the drawer, or finding them with scorch marks on them, or scorched balls of aluminum foil, and you can't keep foil in the house or Q-tips in the house, because these are all tools of the trade. They're either smoking it or snorting it. Broken pens where they're using the cylinder from the pens to snort. Papers rolled up in a straw formation, or pieces of straw. Burnt caps of bottle caps. All of these things, you start seeing them, and I didn't even realize what I was seeing. I was watching that descent, and I didn't know what I was seeing. So those are all tools of use, and people need to be aware. If you're seeing one of those, maybe the spoons are going, in the trash or disappearing in the car sometimes. But if it's a combination of things and you start to see those, you need to have a very tough conversation. And if you need help, there's help around to help you do that.
And I know too, we talked about the cost. It's expensive, but really the ultimate cost is life.
It is. It is. Monetary cost, Beacon did a study, Memo Derricker at SU, in 2013. The cost just to the Eastern Shore in not addressing illicit drug and alcohol use was $1.12 billion a year. That's billion with a B.
Yeah.
And that's just the monetary cost. Nationwide right now, 129 people die every day from overdoses. 129. So we just came off a long weekend. That means 387 families are planning their kids' funerals today. That's a lot of people.
It is.
If you put a plane in the sky that crashed every day with 129 people on it, we'd be grounding those planes and figuring out what's going on and how do we fix it. Nobody flies until we do.
And I know sometimes, we talked about the signs, but are there other things that can lead to this path of people using? Is there a gateway to ultimately, heroin?
Yes, there are many paths to it and very few paths out. One of the paths is that just starting with a little bit of alcohol, sneaking a beer here and there, or smoking a joint here and there. Marijuana is a gateway in many ways, and I had to come around to that. But it's not that it's addictive necessarily, and there will be debates on both sides of that, but one of the problems is that it lowers your inhibitions, and that it gives you permission, if you will. We're told, don't smoke pot, don't do marijuana, don't do any drugs, don't drink. And then you do. And you think, well, that wasn't so bad. What's the big deal? Yeah. And then the parents oftentimes will excuse, well, just, maybe they catch them drinking. Well, just don't do any drugs. And then they catch them smoking pot. Well, just don't do any hard drugs. Don't take pills. Don't do. And you kind of give yourself permission. I think one of the messages from Tony Hoffman was that that's what he did. He smoked a little bit, and then he said, oh, I'm already smoking pot. What's a little pill? I'm already doing a little pill. What's a little heroin? Mm-hmm. And it progresses from there, and giving yourself the okay to do that. And so in that way, it is a pathway, and it is one of the ways in. Right. And so I would encourage people to just live a clean, healthy life and abstain, because you have to be aware that this is a slippery slope.
And we also talked about that that basically what everything can lead to is death. And I think for teens out there watching, they think, yes, it would be tragic and awful if my friend was killed in a car accident, or that's reality to them. But in reality, this is causing more deaths than even car accidents.
Yes, every year for the last 2 years now, more people have died in the U.S. from overdoses than died from either auto accidents or gun violence. We hear about that on the news all the time when that happens. Someone gets shot, someone dies, someone dies in a car accident. We hear about those on the news.
Sure.
We don't hear about all the overdose deaths, so we don't realize how many people are dying, but it's more than either of those. And in some states, it's more than the two combined.
And I think we need to probably bring a little more attention to that.
Yes.
That would make sense.
The only other thing that I would like to mention is that this is my lifesaver kit. Mm-hmm. And there are some packages that are smaller. There are different methods of delivery, but this is Narcan. This is naloxone. And this is the overdose reversal drug, so that if you see someone that's fallen out unconscious and you don't know what it is, you can use this. If it's an overdose, an opiate overdose, this will bring them back. This will could help save them their life. It doesn't always, it may be too late, but this can help. If it's not an opiate overdose, it's a heart attack or anything else, it's harmless. It doesn't do anything. So there's no risk in using it. And Maryland has Good Samaritan laws that says that you can do this trying to help, and if it doesn't work, you're not responsible. So there's no reason not to do this. Wicomico County offers training, free training and free naloxone every month, the second Tuesday of every month, and I really encourage everyone to get trained and carry a kit with them.
Yeah, it's not just for law enforcement. It could be someone in the community who has a sister who uses. Anyone in the community can do it.
Certainly, if you have someone close to you that is using, then you need to be trained, and you need to have it with you at all times. But even people who don't know someone or don't know that they know someone yet, you can walk into the bathroom at a store or a restaurant and find someone. You could walk out into the parking lot and find them. You just never know when you'll get the chance to save someone's life.
Definitely.
And believe me, every life is worth saving because you don't know what genius lies beneath that addiction.
As far as going through the process, though, with your son, I mean, there are. We talked with Matt Massarella. There are resources. There are things. There are programs in place. It's not really being ignored. Do you think it's working?
It's not being ignored now. We are talking about it more, and a lot of that is because of a lot of the Stop the Stigma campaigns. People like myself that are in positions to get someone to hear them are standing up and saying, look, this is affecting all of us. This is not their problem or his problem. It's our problem. And that conversation has grown from a grassroots level, but it started way behind the curve. We have I think Matt talked about the 8505, 8507 program, where if someone gets in trouble with the law, they can, for once in their life, only once do you get to do it, choose treatment, ask for treatment over incarceration. But there are about 1,100 people on the waiting list for 125 beds statewide. So while there are resources, there aren't enough. It's very, very difficult. We have parity laws. The 2008 federal law, Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, said that insurance companies have to cover those two treatments for mental health and substance use the same as any other disease, as if it were diabetes or heart disease or liver disease or anything else. But it's not happening. It's not being enforced. It's very, very difficult. The reimbursement rates are really low, so it's not a working business model for many of our treatment centers or for the professionals that we need to man them and to work with people in those centers. So we're way behind the curve. That's why we're so focused on prevention as well as the intervention, because it's so much easier to stay out of it than to get out of it.
And that's what I wanted to ask you to kind of wrap up, is that, you know, you have been through this personally with your son. So your message to the students that are sitting watching this video is what?
Don't even start. Opiates are such an aggressive hijacker of your brain. They really are. In one time, you could be hooked, or in one time, you can be dead. You can die with the first use, and it doesn't matter if you're snorting it or if you're injecting it or if you're smoking it. You can die either way. You can die from pills that are legally prescribed that you get out of your prescription cabinet or out of your medicine cabinet, or if the prescription was written to you. You can take enough that it can kill you. And it's very, very dangerous. And they need to know that. They need to just stay away from it to begin with. And I hate for this to sound like the Just Say No campaign, but I think we have to give them more information than that. They have to see what this does to people. It has destroyed our family. We're raising our 9-year-old grandson who doesn't have his parents around. And that's tough. But we're not alone. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people do it. I believe I belong to a online group on Facebook called the Addicts Mom. 70,000 people nationwide in this group. And every day I read stories about people who were lost. They got out of jail at 11:30 at night and were dead by 5:30 in the morning. They started using on Monday and they were dead by Thursday. It's that quick, you know. And even one mom locally whose child used and died the very first time, and she found them. The very first time. You don't get a chance to even fight back. It just takes you out. And that's what you need to know. And if you know someone, it's a family or a friend or yourself that needs help, please reach out to the health department, reach out to us. Locally, we have a group called Caring and Sharing that in the Face of Addiction that you can find on Facebook, and we will help you find those resources. They're scarce, and you have to fight for them, but they're there, and we will help you find it.
All right, Laura, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll be back with our next guest in just a moment. And joining me now is Lieutenant Jason King with the Salisbury Police Department. Jason, thank you for joining me. So we're talking to the youth of Wicomico County. These are high school students. You know, as an officer of the law, can you talk a little bit about what you see as far as the heroin problem, drug addiction here locally?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jenny. This is a very important topic to me personally. It's probably the most dangerous epidemic I've seen in quite some time since I've been in law enforcement. Opiate and heroin abuse is absolutely ravaging the population of young people here in the county, and I can't stress enough just how dangerous it is.
Yeah, so because you see how it affects people's lives. I mean, from overdoses, I don't know if you've ever been to the scene of an overdose or responded or helped with that situation, but it's so very real. It's raw.
Absolutely, absolutely. We deal with a number of overdoses every week. Unfortunately, they've increased over the last few years. I've certainly been to any number of death scenes that were where opiates were responsible, opiate abuse. And I tell you, it doesn't matter whether you smoke, you snort, you inject. It doesn't matter how you put this stuff in your body. It can kill you the first time, the second time, or the 10th time, or the 100th time. It doesn't matter. It's highly, highly dangerous.
I know sometimes too, you know, if kids are with other youth and they see that their friend might have overdosed, they might get scared to call because they don't want to get in trouble with the law. Does that happen? I mean,
it does happen on occasion, and it shouldn't happen, because as law enforcement, that's the last thing that we want to do is to discourage people from calling when their friend's in trouble. And they actually have passed a law some time ago where if you call to get your friend help in that situation, you cannot be charged with a crime, and we will not try to charge you with a crime. We want to hear about these things. We want to help these people and save lives.
Sure. No, and that's good to know. I think that the youth need to know that. So it's not something too where, you know, I've heard stories too where they're like, oh, just dump them at the, you know, the ER and then run. But sometimes that's too late too. I know that Narcan is being used locally. Your officers have Narcan on them to help?
Yes, our officers are equipped with Narcan, and EMS also has that readily available. The faster that you can call 911 and get some help to that individual, the better chances they're going to have to survive. And it's also helpful to have someone there to talk to figure out exactly what they did ingest.
Sure. Because it could be a number of different things.
Exactly.
So, and I think too, it's important. Even if you have Narcan on you, you still should call 911 because it's not a permanent
Exactly,
fix.
exactly. Yeah, there's additional treatment that needs to be administered at the hospital, and it's important that even though I know Narcan is now privately available and some people are maintaining that in their home, you still need to contact 911 and get that individual to the hospital right away.
Now, you said it's pretty much the worst you've ever seen it. Do you have any inkling of an idea why? I mean, why is this happening now?
Well, I think a lot of what we're seeing is a result of the overprescription of opiates that happened about a decade ago by doctors and medical personnel, and we've certainly tightened the reins on that. But unfortunately, these opiates are very easy to get hooked on. You can be hooked on them the very first time that you try it. And heroin, sometimes these kids experiment with things that are maybe in their medicine cabinet at home, and then all of a sudden they develop a habit, and heroin becomes the only way that they can get a hold of the opiates once the pills run out. But I can tell you, it doesn't matter whether or not you're using Percocet or Vicodin or oxycodone or Oxycontin or heroin. They're all opiates, and they're all highly addictive, and they ruin lives.
Sure. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's important for, the youth in our community to understand how dangerous this problem is. And, if you had one message, would it just be just don't try it?
Yeah, absolutely. Leave it alone. The economic toll that this takes on the user and on the community it pales in comparison to the damage it does to you as an individual and to your family and your loved ones. And it's just a real tragedy anytime that anybody engages in this and becomes addicted to this stuff. And it's dangerous. It really is.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
We'll be back with our next guest in just a moment. And I'm sure that you've seen this person before that I'm about to talk to. It's the mayor of Salisbury, Jake Day, who's here to talk about the opioid problem. It's really all over the place, but I know that it's really hitting it hard here on the Eastern Shore. So Jake, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, as the mayor of Salisbury, kids see you in your role, what you're doing, what the city's doing to help combat this problem?
Sure, Jenny. So it wasn't that long ago that I was a student at Bennett High School. So I grew up in this town. Things were certainly different in terms of what the pressures were, but they were there. Heroin wasn't present the way it is today, but we had drugs. There was alcohol present. There were all sorts of social pressures, and there were consequences to those pressures, right? We dealt with those too. I mean, we had the Bennett Memorial Garden, and now if you're a student at Y High or Parkside or Mardella, you might have a different sort of space where you remember students. I know Y High actually has a memorial garden. But Bennett, we had 3 students my year pass away. And now that's not something that kids are used to dealing with, and that's not something many of us are comfortable talking about, but losing people is a very real thing. And we dealt with it as high school students, and I know our students in this community have dealt with it. I mean, there have been young people who have passed away, and some from drugs recently. So recognizing those challenges, Salisbury, and recognizing that crisis, really. Salisbury has been working today, recently, with the state of Maryland and Wicomico County, our health department, and our state's attorney's office to do a couple things. One, to bring Mr. Hoffman, Tony Hoffman, to town. You recently heard from him, but also to support the people who are suffering from addiction to drugs, and to provide some outreach and to connect them to resources to help them get healing. And in addition to that, we're bringing together some of the experts in our community who work with people who are addicted, who work with young people, who work with those who may have family or friends who have addiction, and to start to advise the city on what's next. What are the next steps that we need to take? Let me tell you, every community in this country is dealing with this issue right now. Every single one. We're not unique in that sense. But what we have to do is recognize that just because everybody else is dealing with it doesn't excuse us from addressing it. Sure. So we've got to work together to eradicate drugs from our community.
And I think too, we spoke about how it touches the lives of everyone. I mean, you have been touched by this personally, and then, you also, you have a little girl and another one on the way, so this is going to continue the conversation even for you personally as a family.
That's right. So I do. I have family members. I have friends. I have citizens in my community that are suffering every day with the struggle of addiction. And we know people who have passed away. And let me tell you, this is not to scare anybody. This is a reality. Right. Death is a consequence of drug use. And there's no way to know if your body is going to react in such a way when you put something in it that this is going to be the first and last time you use drugs. Sure. There's no way to know whether or not you're going to be able to bounce right back or experiment or try and maybe give it up, or if you're going to be addicted for life, or if this is going to be the end. I mean, there is no way to prepare for those things, no way to predict those things. And that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, never to walk down that road.
Right. And that's something that Laura touched on. Just don't go there. But so students here watching this video need to know that you need to talk about it. You can't just, push it under a rug and think that won't happen to me.
Right.
It's important to talk about it. I think that it's important to talk to your parents about it, or a teacher or someone. But I mean, you as a dad, I have 2 boys, it has to be out in the open.
There are, for every kid in Salisbury, every kid in Wicomico County, there are adults that care about you. Whether they're at home, in school, there are adults that care about you. Whether it's in the mayor's office. If you got nobody else to talk to, come to the mayor's office. I'm not a scary guy. So let me say this. The way I talk to my daughter right now, it's mostly baby noises. She's 9 months old, so it wouldn't make sense to most kids most high school students who are listening to this conversation. But that being said, there is an adult who can speak to you and who is willing to get on your level and understand what you're dealing with and the pressures you're going through right now. And it's important to remove the barrier and remove the fear of talking about these things and to say, you know what, I'm going to ask the question of mom or dad or teacher or guidance counselor or principal or mentor or mayor. And I'm going to say, hey, what did you say when you first encountered drugs? What did you say when somebody tried to pressure you into doing something? What did you say when somebody offered you something? How did you deal with those situations? Right. Because believe me, those adults have experiences. They've been where you've been, and they can certainly provide you some useful guidance.
And I think too, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to be in that situation. That is a very, you're kidding yourself if you think that.
I grew up in I think this is a really nice community, and I grew up with great parents around me, and believe me, drugs are everywhere. They are absolutely everywhere. The pressures of alcohol, drugs, all of those things are, they don't respect your income or your parents' income. They don't respect your race. They don't respect your ethnicity or your religion, or whether you're a 2-parent household or a 1-parent household, or whether you, have green eyes or blue eyes, or what kind of car you drive. They don't respect any of those things. Drugs will find and destroy your life, no matter who you are. You see the most famous people in the world suffering and losing everything they have to addiction. And it's because we can't control what drugs do to us. They control us. Right. And it's a really powerful thing and a very scary thing for that reason. And that's one of the many reasons never to walk down that road. And more importantly, to try to understand those consequences and to talk to people about it.
All right, Jake, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, you've heard from all of the local people in this community who care very much about you and about the community and really want to fight this drug problem. But we want to give you information and resources that if you know someone, or maybe it's yourself or a friend or a family member, that you can reach out to for more help. First, there's the 211 number. It sounds like 911, but it's 211. And you can call that in an emergency, and you will get help right away. If you think your friend is overdosed or is using, call 211. There's someone will pick up the phone and help you through it. There's also a group on Facebook called Caring and Sharing. This is a local support group. Maybe you just jot this down and tell your mom or your dad, but you can actually go to this local support group for help as well. And then you can always call the Wicomico County Health Department. That number is 410-742-3784. Just call, tell them why you're calling. You don't have to tell them who you are, and you can get help, even anonymously. And just remember, if you never start, you never have to figure out how you're going to stop.